I actually had an interview at Cambridge for Queen's for my undergrad, and I was accepted with a Gates scholarship and everything. But I ended up going to Edinburgh instead.
So why that?
Welcome to Frank Stajano Explains. Today's topic is proof that doing a PhD in computer science does not mean having to wait until later to become a mother. Well, I'm not sure that was meant as today's topic, but it's certainly one interesting and encouraging message to come out of today's interview. We continue our ongoing series of discussions with wonderful people who did computer science at Cambridge. Now, as you just heard, why would anyone in their right mind receive an offer and a fully paid scholarship to come up to Cambridge for an undergraduate degree in computer science and not take it up? You'll have to hear it from her, but she did eventually come back here for her master and her PhD. If you find this video inspiring, give it a like. I really appreciate it and it helps the channel a lot. If you want more like this one, subscribe, and if you have any questions, ask us in the comments. Enjoy.
Welcome. I'm very happy to introduce Diana Vasile, who is not my student for once, but she's a PhD student of someone who many years ago was my PhD student. So in some sense, we are connected. And if we go back the other way, if you look at the PhD supervisors of PhD supervisors, then she's also on this lineage that goes back to Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei and so on. It's not a joke. Look it up. Look it up on the mathematical genealogy. Anyway, Diana is a superstar because besides doing this PhD at Cambridge, getting a best paper award, or at least one that I know very well about because I was there, and getting internship at Google, all sorts of fantastic things. She has done 2 boys during her PhD. So
you're making me sound like a little robot.
I don't know of any robots that make boys. So
fair enough.
Anyway, please tell us something in your own words about yourself, what you like, what you're up to, and what your interests
are. Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been at it for quite a few years with computer science. It's very funny though, because I wasn't thinking I was gonna be choosing computer science when I decided to go to uni in England. It's just because we had to choose a subject. But I made the right choice. Just to sum it up, I do have 2 boys, one's 7, one's 4. It's been a tough journey, but you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can. Everything is slower and you have to understand that, but you can do it. And there's quite a lot of support at university, and supervisors are great in general. Really, there's nothing you cannot do if you put your mind to it. And I'm hoping through the other questions I can prove that. There's nothing extremely special about me. It's just I put my mind to it and I did do it.
So about this parenthood, for example, I've come to it very late compared to you. You know, I've done everything, you know, all my career and so on, a full professor. Then after that, I became a dad at last. Whereas you didn't even finish your degree, already become mother of 2. How did you choose to do this so early?
It just felt like the right thing to do. Right time. I got married after I finished in between my undergrad and my master. So I did my undergrad in Edinburgh University. And after that, in the break between the undergrad and the MPhil, I was going to start at Cambridge. I got married to my now to be husband. And, you know, the natural progression is usually kids. I was quite stressed about it. So I had Mircea, my oldest, when I was in my MPhil, not my PhD. That did mean I need to take a break from writing up the MPhil dissertation and come back to it 9 months later, which is a challenge in itself. Yeah, I mean, it felt like the natural progression for me, right? There's always 2 lives. You have your personal life, you have your professional life. And unfortunately, back in the day, you could only progress with one, especially us as women historically have always had to, no matter where our professional life led us, if we decided to have kids, kind of everything merged back into the family life, and that was it. And unfortunately, and luckily, sorry, we don't live in those times anymore. So you can have both. It's just what I chose to do. And like my supervisor says, even though everything's taken longer, he always tells me, yeah, but you have these wonderful kids that other people don't have. Everybody does their PhD and everything, and then they have kids. So even though you feel like you took a hit in your professional life to have kids, and obviously the professional life slowed down, it didn't stop for you. And when everybody else will start having kids later in life, like you, Frank, just said, you had kids after you became professor, other people have kids after they get a job or everything. That doesn't mean for them they won't have that slow down and then pick up again. So it's just nothing different. It's just a different life stage, right?
Yes, I really like it. And so was your supervisor during the MPhil the same as during your PhD?
Yeah. It's a very funny way, the way I chose him, or he chose me, or anything. He was the director of the MPhil course. So when I was trying to tell the university I'm pregnant, actually, I wasn't showing it. I was about 3-4 months along, but I wasn't showing my pregnancy or anything. I thought to myself, who on earth do I tell? And then I said, oh, maybe I should tell the director of the course, and then he can direct me to whoever else I need to tell. So I asked him for a chat. And it's good that, I mean, most people are relatable in the lab, but especially him, because as we were walking up to his office where I was going to tell him that I'm pregnant, he had to take an emergency call. And then after he hung up, he told me, sorry about that. I don't normally randomly take calls while I'm talking to people, but my wife is about to give birth. So what did you want to speak to me about? And I'm like, actually, I'm pregnant too, and I don't know what to do. So he helped me out a lot. He's very practical and very organized. So he's like, did you choose a subject? Because you have to write up a dissertation on a project or an essay or something you want to do. What do you prefer? What are your interests? Let's be a bit more proactive than the other students and find you a supervisor. And he directed me to someone who was in the area I had work experience, because in my undergrad I worked in parallel to my degree, part-time and full-time during holidays for a cloud computing company. So he directed me to someone who was doing cloud computing in the lab and interesting stuff with cloud computing. So we went, had a chat, but then it turned out they couldn't really fully supervise me because they weren't a lecturer. They were a research associate. So Alistair decided, he said, actually, it is within my area of interest. So I'm happy to supervise you, to act as a co-supervisor. So yeah, it gradually moved on to doing a PhD with him in a completely different area. I changed loads. After my maternity leave, I changed the subject I was going to write up the dissertation in.
Very interesting. And also very encouraging, I should say.
Yeah, no, it's flexible. It really is. I mean, I can't talk for everybody out there, right? I can talk only from my experience, but it wasn't the end of my world that I had kids. It doesn't have to be.
Yes, whereas your second child happened during your PhD.
Yes, and I was so stressed to tell my supervisor that. I was like, okay, fine, you had one kid, but are you going to have another one? I was just so stressed. And when I went into my meeting to tell him, I was nearly crying with stress. And his reaction was like, yay, well done. He literally went hands up and like, yay, fists up. Well done. This is really good for you. I mean, it's a progression for your family. You're growing your family. And I was like, yes, but I was so stressed. How on earth am I going to do this? A new baby and a PhD and everything. But it's worked out. I'm writing up now. Yes, I am writing up 6 years later, but no, 5 years later. But that's because I went for an internship as well during my PhD. And I had my 6 months with my second son being a second-time mother, I think I was more relaxed. I didn't take the 9 months I took with my first. I was like, yeah, okay, he can go to nursery. Nursery is right across the street from the computer lab. So I basically went and fed him there 2 or 3 times a day while he was still small, and spent time with him. I was part of the child take care. I knew everybody and everything. So there's lots of flexibility in that too. Nobody cares when you come and when you go from the lab, right, Frank? As long as you do your job, it really doesn't matter if you're there for 2 hours or you're there for 8 or 10.
Yes, we don't measure how long people stay at work. We just measure what.
That's an advantage of the whole industry. I don't think I've met anyone to complain that they have to do a 9 to 5 job without even having a toilet break or something. We are flexible in this subject.
How did this parenthood interact with the funding for your PhD?
They were great. They were great. So they gave me. They couldn't support me.
Sorry, who is your funder? Who funded your PhD?
EPSRC funded both my MPhil and my PhD. So I had a clause saying they'll find my MPhil provided I apply for a PhD. Nobody said take up a PhD, but I did take it up anyway. They couldn't support me during my MPhil break. So for my oldest son, I don't know why, something in the rules. But they did support me for my PhD break, 6 months of full pay. And then there would have been nothing, but I did come back. So it just basically, the funding moved with me.
Right.
So
and the fact that you've now taken 6 months extra, 6 years extra, or whatever, compared.
No, 5 years.
Must have extended the period to much longer than the normal support for a PhD, right?
So it was funding for 3 years with the 6 months maternity leave. That's 3 years and a half. And there's obviously the 6 months I was in Google. So that would take it up to 4 years, because they just basically put a stop on the clock for my internship. And then they started back up when I came back.
You mentioned some 6 years at some point.
Yeah, I said 6, I meant 5. It's actually been 5. I'm going into my 6 years, but I won't make it because I'll finish by then. Yeah, and the last year, my supervisor helped me, put me on a different grant, because I partially also did another project in a different group, so I was eligible to go on that grant.
Great. Excellent. Well, that I'm slightly insisting on these things, just because it's quite exceptional to have the chance to interview someone who had children so early during her studies. But anyway, let me get into things I tend to ask in these interviews about earlier on. So it's interesting for me to have examples of people who are not white rich boys who went into computing, and to find out when it is that they got it, that computers were an interesting thing for them. When did you first program a computer? Why was it exciting for you?
I was very young. I mean, I guess I was also, I'm part of the white boys club in this respect, because my parents did work on computers. My dad was the white boy with a computer in his arms all the time. So my dad worked in IT and logistics. My mom did loads of stuff on the computer. She wrote loads. She wrote books. Back in the day, people would send things for publishing, so that was like a job on the side for her. So she would always write stuff. So it was only natural that I'd try. And what were the things you could try back then, right? You'd play in Paint, you'd maybe do presentations in PowerPoint. So I guess the first thing wasn't really an actual program I'd done. It was more, I designed the logo for my mom's company in PowerPoint, of all things. And I was about 8. Then I'd moved, coming from Romania, so I'm Romanian. it's about 50-50. I mean, it's a normal range you would expect for girls and boys to be exposed to maths and science and computer science and stuff. In every school, you basically get like 5 classes out of 6 that are focused on maths and informatics, and 1 that is focused on like social sciences. And I did like maths. I've always loved maths. So I moved to the normal progression. I moved to maths and informatics. And so we basically started programming in C there. I know most people say Pascal. No, we were C. Did the usual palindrome checks and everything you play with, all the algorithms, but they just clicked.
How old were you at the time?
So I was 13. Between the ages of 10 to 13, we didn't really do programming. We yet again were just playing in Word and Excel and like all the Microsoft suite to just get a grip of like using computers. But as you move to high school in Romania, you start actual computer science. So we did programming in C. The downside is back then we only had 1 computer lab, so you didn't have computers for every kid, and never mind that, you didn't, out of 6 hours of computer science in a week, you only got 1 chance of sitting at the computer every other week, right? Because it was 1 computer to 2 kids, 1 hour in the lab, 5 hours in the classroom. So we would program on paper. You would basically get, write a palindrome checker. This is what a palindrome is. And you'd write it on paper and you'd run through all the scenarios by hand and make sure it all works and it does the progression and everything you're supposed to do. And then when you got the chance to sit at the computer, you type it up and check that it all works. And
you said your father was an uber nerd with computer and so on. You wouldn't try that at home on your own father's or your own computer if you had one, or your father's computer otherwise?
I did, but for a while. Then I just got into the habit of school and the waiting, because it was no fun for me to tell people, oh yeah, I've tested and it all runs and it's fine. And yeah, I mean, it was just normal. I guess it's just the Romanian style. You don't get that much time on the computer, or it was back then. Now,
so the other kids in your class didn't have a computer at home?
No, not really. I mean, looking back, this is early 2000s, right? Just before the 2000s hit, 1 in 10 kids would have a phone, like a landline in their house. Never mind an actual connection to the internet or a computer or anything. We did have a desktop machine starting with like 2003. So yeah, that's when I was 13. So yeah, I would put them on the computer, provided I got time. Nobody was using the phone, dial up.
Okay. So anyway, you did computers at your school early on. When did it become something that you really thought was super cool for you? Because stuff you do at school, I mean, people may do stuff at school from when they're very young, but may think it's super boring, right?
Well, doing stuff is both super cool and super boring, right? I don't know. For me, it's always been interesting, just because when I looked at, I didn't see the maths problems behind the scenes. I just saw it like a creation, right? You would write something that is able to tell you the answer, and that was really cool. You just made the computer work for you. You didn't have to do it manually. You didn't have to write it and check it manually. The computer would immediately tell you what's what. So yeah, I was interested at the beginning. Now, if your question is if when I decided to actually use it as a progression, as a professional choice, then that was at the choosing time of universities. I applied to both US universities that are quite open-ended. You basically go there and do whatever for the first 2 years, try a lot of subjects, and then you decide on your major. So, and UK universities where you had to decide and obviously be interviewed I actually had an interview at Cambridge for Queen's for my undergrad, and I was accepted with a Gates scholarship and everything. But I ended up going to Edinburgh instead.
So why that?
They asked like a conditional offer. They asked me to get a certain grade in maths and overall in my baccalaureate, and I was a few points shy of that. So I was like 0.05 points shy of that. So I automatically, because of the system, went on the waiting list, and they said, don't worry, we'll get to you, we'll tell you. And looking back and speaking to people now, I would have got in, but it was 31st of August and schools in Scotland start middle of September. And I had no accommodation, nothing. So I just phoned up Cambridge and cancelled my option. And I said, you know what, I really don't like the uncertainty of it all. I understand there's a process, but I can't wait and miss the first few weeks of university and not have accommodation and anything. So basically cancel my spot on the 31st of August. 1st of September, I booked my flight to Edinburgh. 7th of September, I was flying out. So it was a very quick change. But I don't regret it. I actually loved my time in Edinburgh. And then Cambridge brought me back anyway for a master and PhD. So it's fine. Still got here in the end.
Well, that's also a message to say, if you don't get in, it's not the end of the world. And there's always more chances anyway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, PhD here in Cambridge after not getting in the first round as an undergraduate.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you get good grades in university, they were impressed enough with my grades in Edinburgh to actually give me a full scholarship with maintenance included for my master. So that's an advantage.
Okay. Yes.
If anything, I didn't have to pay anything.
No. Yeah, well, at last all the hard work is rewarded in some way.
It is, indeed.
Yes. So you're now near the finishing line of your PhD. What do you see yourself doing in your professional life once you have the PhD?
That's a very good question. I have too many options, I guess one would say, and it's a very hard choice. I can carry on staying in academia and the research life, which I enjoyed very much in my past few years here. Both staying here and obviously all the universities want to have you once you've been in Cambridge. So it's a no-brainer. If Cambridge wants you to stay, why would you go, right? Then there's obviously all the jobs that keep getting offered to me outside of the academia world. I'm still deciding, really. There is a lot of flexibility on that part as well. You can carry on doing research and go join stuff like elevator pitches to start up a new company, or luckily there's a lot of flexibility. I'm sorry, I don't have an actual answer for you, Frank. But
if you don't become an academic, which is more exciting, starting your own company or working in a big company?
Both. I would like immediately to possibly work in a big company because it gives you a lot of exposure, and you get to learn new stuff. Even at this stage, you get to learn new stuff. You meet loads of cool people. And then, yes, as an ultimate goal, I would like to start my own company. But somehow I feel that exposure in the real world will take that possibility of a company, will take it further to an actual successful one, as opposed to, something you start and fails a year later.
Yes. It's wise to just see other people having done it and then do it yourself after you.
Basically, yes. I can learn a bit more.
Wise move, yes. The first one you bake always ends up a bit burnt, so the second one is going to be better. And if someone else bakes it and you just see how they do it, then you can blame them, so that's fine. I think it's a good plan. Now you've given us some very encouraging stories about how it worked well for you as a young mom while you were studying and so on and so on. Is there anything you might want to share about things that were instead difficult as a woman in a male-dominated field, for example? It don't have to be. I mean, you can say, no, everything was great. But if there's anything, then we want to hear it from you rather than from someone like me who's just secondhand.
Well, it's never all perfect anyway. Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing quite good with undergrads, but as you go further up the food chain, right, masters and then PhD, the number of women decreases. I'm not one to like only hang out with women. I'm very comfortable around men. I'm comfortable around everyone. But it's nice to know you have a little support, right? It's nice to know when I was a mom, it was nice to know another mom in the lab, and kind of exchange ideas and everything, because that's when it gets hard. Nobody realizes that you do need someone to talk to, someone who can actually relate to you. So I did have, I guess, a difficult time until I found friends, but that's where different initiatives around the lab helped. So Women at CL helped a lot with that. They basically connect the women in the lab from undergrad to PhD, so you get to meet everybody. They put up a lot of inspirational events and everything. I was also involved with them, so I was deputy chair. I started off from being a PhD rep to becoming a deputy chair 2-3 years later, and help out organize the events. We organized 2 conferences in my time there, with Oxford University and their women kind of event, Women at Oxford initiative. So we basically put up loads of events whose scope is for women to meet other women and get inspired, right? And this is the one difficulty I had, was until I found out about that, it was to actually meet women. The reason for it all is because being pregnant in my MPhil, I wasn't up to going to events. I wasn't up to really socializing much. So obviously I lacked from that sense, not running into random women and chatting to them in the lab during my course. It didn't help. But then as I came back and figured out, oh, there is a Women at CL, there is everything, and they are. Maybe I should have answered my emails when I was in my MPhil pregnant and tired. It would have helped.
Yes. Well, I haven't asked you anything about what it is that you're actually doing. What's the computing things that you are doing in your research? What have you built? What have you invented?
So I do security, even though I'm not in the security group. My supervisor was part of the security group where I look at the security of encrypted communication. So I've looked, this is all going into my PhD, into my dissertation. I've looked at the security of secure messaging, apps like WhatsApp, Signal, so all quite applied. Well, if anything, I had problems deciding on something very abstract. So when I chose this subject, it was because it was applied and I could relate to it. And then another project I worked on was to figure out the needs of whistleblowers and investigative journalists. And with that in mind, we built a prototype for them to have an option to initiate contact with, like, whistleblowers to initiate contact with journalists securely right from the start. Yeah. That's basically it. Lots of securing communication involved.
So we said before starting the interview that maybe we should reach out to these young girls, not when they're just doing their A levels, but before, right? Before they choose what's the stuff they should specialize in. So if you imagine having a chat with someone that age, then what do you think is their burning question? If they could ask a question to someone in your position, what would they want to ask, and what would you tell them in response?
They'd probably ask about the maths, how much maths is involved. Not everybody likes maths, right? They'd ask about the maths. They'd ask about the boringness, which you have asked already. I mean, there's different way about looking at stuff, and you have to decide what is indeed boring for you and what it isn't. When I chose to apply for university in the UK, where I had to choose a subject, my question was, okay, so out of everything I've ever done and enjoyed and been good at, what is the stuff that is not going to bore me? Because obviously you go to uni when you're 18, but you spend the majority of your life doing that thing that you chose when you were 18, right? And I was like, yeah, computers. Computer science would give me that, because no matter how bored I am in my current job, I can join a new job and all of a sudden go from God knows what I was doing, financial, quantum stuff, to designing games or designing websites or everything. It's such a broad option that you literally cannot get bored. And it's a very, very small move from one to the other, as long as you're willing to learn. And for girls, just I carry on saying, play with maths. Don't be scared to play with maths. Involve it in everything you do. Don't go for all the purple and pink Lego that you get. Don't be afraid to experiment with everything. Yeah, science should be fun. It shouldn't be scary, and it shouldn't be a school subject only. So I try to do that with my kids. We do loads of stuff. We do volcano. Obviously, they're boys, right? But even if they were girls, we'd still do volcanoes. We'd still be building and breaking stuff. We'd still be experimenting with everything. We'd still be looking at building our own games in Scratch, which is such a nice platform for younger kids. Yeah. Just basically don't treat girls like girls. Everybody is the same. Everybody has the same ability. Everybody, as long as you empower them, everybody can do everything. It's not only boys and it's not only girls, it's everybody.